Hello friends and gamers, and welcome to Fortress. My name is Jinx, and today we're looking at the campaign medals for Italy for Global War 1936 version 3 for the Tournament of the Spring Offensive. So if you don't know what these campaign medals are, you're probably, well, completely lost because I've been producing nothing but this lately. So the campaign medals are a series of 3 military ribbons that you'll be awarded at the end of the tournament to show which campaign you played in, what kind of, well, prestige you acquired, kind of an in-house tournament version of victory points or kind of accomplishments, and what nation you played. It's a way of keeping track of, well, of your campaign, because you're making efforts to come and play this game and have fun with the group of people. I think it should be rewarded with some level of recognition for past experiences. I think it's really cool this way. I, for one, feel inclined that once I start acquiring these medals, I want to show up year after year after year, just because you don't want to break a set. You know, you want to come in the first tournament, the second tournament, third tournament, just because you're acquiring these medals. And since it's visible, where people might be showing up in the future with like a, a ribbon bar or whatever they call it, a fruit salad essentially of these medals, where you have, 3 different sets of 3 or 3 rows of 3 rows of different campaigns. I think people will really be inspired to keep on coming and keep attending, I think. So the first ribbon of the set is the campaign ribbon, which will have a special for each tournament. It'll have a little attachment of 1 for the first year. The prestige ribbon is a bit of an in-house victory point type of looking at things, but not really. We call it prestige stars because our thinking behind that is it's not all about victory points. Sometimes you'll play a really close game and still get 3rd place. It's 3rd place, but it's still like, sometimes you do really well, and did really well up into the last couple turns, and then things fell apart. So it should be recognized to your achievements and accomplishments, and sometimes a person can get, a ways in there, and so you'll be like, well, sure you got silver, sure you got bronze, but you got a tier 3 star. You got 3 stars on your prestige ribbon, even though you lost. Like, you must have been doing something right. And I think this is actually one of the fun factors behind these prestige medals or the campaign medals, is that you'll be able to see this on people's chests. After 2 or 3 games of this, you'll show up and there'll be somebody else, and you'll see like, you're a formidable Commonwealth player because you got, 3 or 4 stars each and every time, or 3 stars, let's say, for the last couple of games. Like, you're really good. I got to watch out for you because you are, and you're playing the Commonwealth again, like you are really good. So I think this is a really interesting way of building up people's reputation and acknowledging the efforts they made in the game. And the national ribbon shows which nation you played, and if you won 1st or 2nd place, or if your alliance won 1st or 2nd place, you'll have a little gold or silver bronze star here. And lastly, you'll have an oak leaf attachment as well if you played more than 1 major power. The idea there is if you're showing up as, well, Italy, and then you show up and your other 2 Axis partners called in sick or their flight was delayed, it should be recognized that you are playing more than 1 major power now. That you stepped into that role, and now instead of having just a blank on there, you'll automatically be upgraded to like a silver oak leaf to represent that you played 2 other major powers. It's much harder to play more nations against, instead of just 1. In some ways, Russia is lucky that it only has to ever worry about 1 thing, themselves. Okay, I'd like to thank my followers, my watchers, my subscribers, my lieutenants, Madman Dan, Liam Borowski, Trig, and Edelwolf for their feedback and support and all this stuff, and your really cool suggestions. I really do 100% appreciate it. Whenever I work on this stuff, I have you guys, all your comments that you've ever put on my stuff in regards to the medals. I have it all up there, watching, reading, sorting through the ideas, because you guys come up with some great ideas. And even if some of the ideas are a little bit unpolished, sometimes I have an unpolished idea too, and our 2 ideas will merge together and come up with a fairly good idea between the 2 of us. That's just the way I see things. So thank you very much for your feedback. Okay, diving into it. You can get your 4 stars. There's 3 different ways to get your tier 1 star, and 3 different ways your tier 2 star. And lastly, in tier 4 star, there's just 2 different ways to get that. So you don't have to go for all 3 different ways. You don't have to succeed in scoring all 3 different ways. You just score 1, and then you get your tier 1 star. And that's the way it works out. So let's dive into the tier 1 stuff. First one is the Ethiopian War. Gain a prestige star if, at any point in the game, Italy controls the land zone Abyssinia. It shows that you conquered those pesky Ethiopians, Abyssinians, and won that war. Difficult, but not overly so. It's still reasonably difficult. And then we have Corpo Truppe Volontaire. Gain a prestige star if, at any point in the game, Italy has lend-leased a total of 4 units of any type to the national Spain in the Spanish Civil War. I was looking at this, and surprising how much was invested in the Spanish Civil War. I think the amount of troops was 60,000 or something like that, 68,000 total that fought there, 78, somewhere there. You get the idea, a scoop about that much. But a percentage of the annual income of Italy was actually substantial. 15% of its annual income went to supporting nationalist Spain in the Spanish Civil War. That's huge. That's huge. And that was for 4 years. That's substantial stuff. Like, they were the primary person supporting the nationalists in the Spanish Civil War for a long time. You know, Mussolini was looked up to by a lot of the other fascist dictators of the time as well. You know, he was people emulated him to some extent. They liked him, and it was because of his abilities and such, you know, his speaking abilities and that kind of thing. Yeah. Anyways, people thought he was cool, and people looked up to him for also assisting the nationalists here in the Spanish Civil War. I suspect that's why. And that's what that one is. Next one up, we have the Italian Corps in Russia. Gain a prestige star if, at any point during the game, any amount of Italian land units, barring airborne infantry, are involved in combat on land zone with a USSR printed roundel. That is tough, guys. That is a tough one to do. You have to, well, even one unit's not too difficult to do. But the fact that you have to divert resources out there and somewhere catch up with the USSR on a land zone there, that gets a little bit difficult. We haven't looked at our map yet, but we all know where it is. Ethiopian War is roughly here. All right, there we go. Let's get some colors in here. Ethiopia is here. You need to capture that. You start off with troops in Italian Somaliland and Eritrea. So in turn one, you could possibly attack there in turn one if the French don't lend-lease anything. If they lend-lease, then you have to postpone a couple turns until you have sufficient force to go in there and attack them. But eventually it might be possible to do so. You just might have to devote a lot of resources. Spanish Civil War, we see is right here. Italy goes after the Republican Spain goes, so the map will look a little differently, but usually this port is still empty, open, that is, to send lend-lease to. So it will arrive there. You need to send 4 units, so the war has to last at least 4 rounds for it to occur, to happen. I don't know if you could send militia. I think it has to be something that you could, that can move, but I have to double check that just to make sure. Without expansions, that is. You have to send in 4 units. All right, with expansions, you still have to send in 4 units. It's just a little easier because I think you can send a fighter in addition to a land unit on turn 1 if you wanted to. So there's that one. And last one, in a Russian land zone, having units fight in a Russian land zone, 1, 2, 3, 4 territories away. And not only that, you have to have sufficient to actually fight in there, or you might be attacked by them too. So yeah, it's difficult to do, but not overly difficult. It's a diversion of resources that you could otherwise have used somewhere else. That's basically it. Let's move on to the tier 2 stuff. Contingency G. Gain a prestige star if, at any point in the game, Italy controls all the following land zones for a full game round, from the end of the Italian turn to the end of the following Italian turn. All non-island land zones have the printed Greek roundel. I actually really like this one. I don't know about you guys, but I like this one quite a bit. I think it's just because most games, it's Germany that wants to have Italy, right? It says, well, I need that extra buck income. I need to get rid of them, so I'm going to charge in there and grab that. At least that seems to be the case for Global War 36. Most games I've seen there, Germany takes Yugoslavia and says, yeah, grabs that one too. Now keep in mind, in this game, it's a tad bit different because you have Macedonia here, and you can't quite see it where I'm drawing it, but the border for Macedonia is here, so Yugoslavia is not adjacent to Thessaly. But just double check your map if you get to it. Those 2 territories aren't touching. You first have to go Yugoslavia, Macedonia, Thessaly. I've been tripped up by that once before. Alright, so Italy has to grab these 3 territories and hold on to them for a full turn. So that is interesting. It means that you have to have that Mussolini on a white horse saying, I want that, Germany, get out of here, get out of here. I want to ride in Athens on my white horse. And Germany has to let you do that, I guess. And then you have to use enough of your Italian resources to attack from probably Albania, attacking into Thessaly. Thessaly or Macedonia. That is the scoop. That's about it. Now, the British have their own thing where they have to keep, one of these territories alive for each and every turn. And they'll probably fail. Actually, that one's more than likely to fail each and every time. Luckily, they got other things in that category that might succeed, but either Greece has to stay neutral, or Britain has to be able to hold on to it, or one of its allies have to be able to hold on to one of these territories each and every turn. So they may decide that they're going to go for it and invest troops into Peloponnese and hold on to that place until the end of the game, building one militia there per turn, or if they're lucky, grab Thessaly with their free buck right there and build one unit there per turn. And we might even see some reversals where the British units manage to push the Italians back in, or out of Albania. And then the Germans might step in as historical and decide to deal with that pesky British threat. So that will cause some inter-allied, not rivalry, no, but discourse and discussion, and that German shaking his head at the Greeks, the Italians, and saying, like, why did you invade when you weren't ready? You didn't have enough resources. And it duplicates history. So that's why I really like this one. It emulates history quite nicely, I think. Moving on. Rompere I bar delle prigioni. Break the prison bars. Gain a prestige star if at any point in the game, Italy or a member of its alliance control all the following land zones. Rome, Northern Italy, Sicily, Sardinia, Rhodes. So a bunch of Italian territory. But Tunisia, Crete, Malta, Cyprus, and Corsica. Alright. So, Rhodes, Sardinia, Sicily, Rome, and Northern Italy. This is for a tier 2, so we don't want to make it too hard by saying any much more than that. But also, Crete, Cyprus, Malta, Tunisia, Corsica. Now, this one doesn't have to be held by the Italians. It can be held by the member of its alliance. It can be held by the Germans as well. If the Germans decide to send their airborne, like they historically did, to capture Crete, you can absolutely get them to do that if you want to. Likewise, Cyprus, Malta, and all these other ones, they could apply. You have to hold on to all the territories as well. So early game, it's much easier than late game. You have to grab Cyprus, Malta, and Corsica is going to be in your allied hands, as a controlled minor. So realistically, you only have 3 territories to really worry about: Cyprus, Crete, and Malta. Malta, in the game, starts off with only 1 militia, which is kind of underrepresented. I feel like Malta should be a better positioned place. Give them a airbase here, perhaps. I think that would be very valuable to have an airbase over there. Because right now, Malta, I've never seen anybody attack Malta. Unless they had an abundance of Italian resources and are just like, might as well clean it up. But Malta has always survived in our games just because it's not really worth anything to anybody. I think if a person put an airbase in there, it would suddenly become much more appealing to the Italians, because now they can scramble to here and they can scramble to here, and that's quite nice. Now, what else could they do to make it a little bit nicer? Make it a mountain territory. I think that would be quite handy. A mountain territory to represent the defenses there, because it had nice defenses. It's already got the dry dock, so that's quite handy for both sides here. So mountainous, dry dock, airbase, and if people still don't attack it, give it a +1. But yeah, I think like +1 buck IPP for the Italians, let's say, or whatever, right? I think it's well worth. It should be something more appealing to the players. Crete, Crete doesn't have any militia to start off with. Cyprus is worth 1 buck, and I believe it has no militia to start off with either. So it could be an easy grab with only Malta having a militia on it. You might be able to grab all 3 of those. Moving on. Mare Nostro, RC. Gain a prestige star if at the end of the game, Italy controls more surface warships in the Mediterranean than any other major power. I try to structure these tiers in such a way where you have something mid-game, late game, or end game. It's not always the case. Usually this stuff here is usually at any point in the game, but then it starts drifting to the end game stuff. So that way you're looking at, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to have this in the end game, so I need to try to get some of this stuff in the early game just in case I don't have the end game stuff. And you might actually get this one at the end of the game, and you might already have had this one, right? But it's a way of looking at things a little bit differently. Now, I'm not married to this one either. I think it's important that Italy does emphasize its fleet quite a bit, so it is important to have something about the Navy here, so I'm quite happy with it, but I don't think it's necessary to be here, but I'm keeping it for right now. I'm pretty happy with this one. As you see, I've thrown in the artwork as well to symbolize that I'm done and ready to move on to other ones. Moving on to Tier 3. Le mura del Mediterraneo, the walls of the Mediterranean. Get a prestige star if, at any point in the game, Italy controls the following land zones for a full game round: Gibraltar and Eastern Egypt. I see a little correction I need to make right there. Yeah, here we have Gibraltar. I believe Italy did bomb Gibraltar at one point, and this is an artistic rendition of that as well. Operation E. Let's take a quick look at where the map is. Eastern Egypt here, Gibraltar here. So mountainous and city, that's a tough one to grab, but maybe it's doable, maybe not. That's why it's a tier 3, because it is hard. You have to hold on to it for a full turn, so that's a hard one to grab. Moving on, Operation E. Gain a prestige star if at the end of the game, Italy controls the land zone Eastern Egypt. So you see, in this one up here, you have to control it for a full game round and hold on to it for a full turn. This one here is hold on to it at the end of the game. So you might get both. You might get both. If you get this one, you might have this one here as well already. But you definitely, this one is a little bit, well, what I guess I'm trying to say is, Gibraltar is so close to the Atlantic that the Americans are going to be dumping off troops almost immediately. As soon as you grab it, it's not too long before the Americans are dumping off troops or the British are dumping off troops. So Gibraltar is harder to hold on to, and so worthwhile more of a victory of a number 3. Well as, a tier 3 star rather, whereas Eastern Egypt, you have to be doing quite well to actually get and hold Eastern Egypt at the end of the game. It's doable, but you have to be doing quite well. I don't think I've seen it too often, maybe 2 games, I think I've seen that happen, 2 out of 15, so less than 10%, or 2 out of 20, I don't know, so 10%, let's say, I saw it 10%, but even that seems ambitious. I think it's a little less than that. Yeah, I've always described Italy as a bit of a canary in the coal mine, where if Italy's doing good, Germany's probably doing really good. If Italy dies, well, Germany's probably not doing so good. Italy will go first, unless Italy is neutral, but Italy will go first before Germany does for the most part. So it's kind of the warning bell, something bad is happening. So I've been toying around with this idea. Is that just the nature of things, or what would happen if Germany did boost up Italy? Does that mean that you fend off, you're pumping oxygen in your canary and preventing your canary from dying, but you're still suffering from the carbon monoxide, right? Or whatever it is, carbon dioxide. So who knows? I think it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Okay, Operation E, control Eastern Egypt at the end of the game. Next up, we have the Italian army in Russia. Gain a prestige star if at any point during the game, or in the game, Italy controls at least 5 Italian land units and an air unit of any type in one of the 2 following land zones. A land zone with the USSR printed roundel, which is adjacent to a land zone with at least 3 USSR land units, and the USSR city land, Stalingrad land zone. So, if you control these units in any one of the 2 following land zones. Now, I wrote that in a specific way to make sense, because you did have, I was surprised when I read that 250,000 Italians fought in Russia. That's a bunch. I mean, there was more that fought in, okay, there wasn't more, but there was like 100,000 that fought in Spanish Civil War, unless it was a bit more than that. But there was a bunch that fought in the Spanish Civil War, 200 and some thousand. Maybe I'm just wildly exaggerating, but there was a pile of Italians in the Spanish Civil War. No, there wasn't. Anyways, moving on. So there was a 250,000 Italians fighting in Russia. And that's huge. And so I think it's worthwhile representing that in the game. This was pointed out by one of the followers, one of the subscribers. I can't remember who it was. Madman Dan, I think. He had some brilliant ideas there. Or Trig. One of the other characters. Thank you guys, by the way, for these brilliant ideas. I really appreciate them. I was a little stumped for a bit. Now, you have to hold on to a territory or have your troops in a territory, and you have to be adjacent to an enemy-held territory, not only enemy-held, but with troops in it. The reason I wrote it that way is because I didn't want a person to kind of game the system where they say, well, I'm going to leave southern Ukraine in enemy hands because it's worth no money anyways. So I'm going to, we're going to go, the Axis are going to bypass like this, and we'll deal with southern Ukraine later. In the meantime, 5 Italian units show up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and an airplane. They show up, get their bonus. Okay, guys, see you later, and they head on back home to Italy. Like, I didn't want that. I wanted there to be some active enemy. So 1, 2, 3 Russian units, and now those Italians have to come a little bit closer. Not only that, they might actually have to go all the way to Stalingrad if the enemy is still, not cooperating, and have your units in Stalingrad. Because what if the Germans are moving so quick the Italians can't keep up? And so as long as you have them in Stalingrad, you're safe. And the Italians did fight in Stalingrad too. Moving on. Imperial Italy. Gain a prestige star if at the end of the game, Italy or a member of its alliance control all or most of the following land zones except for 2. All land zones with the Italian printed roundel. That's globally, essentially. Tunisia, Northern Algeria, Morocco, French Somaliland. So all of Northern Africa. And Western and Eastern Egypt, Nubia and Sudan, British Somaliland, and Abyssinia. So that's a pile of territory, with the exception of 2. This one, I still am a little bit not sure. The reason it's so, Imperial Italy was basically a fascist plan on capturing a certain amount of territory, and that plan was capturing basically this, holding on to this territory. And so for me, I actually included an extra 2 in there. I threw in Northern Algeria and Morocco, and I don't know if I should have. I feel like I should have stayed with the historical plan that was established for Imperial Italy to grab those territories. Now, of course, you also have to hold on to Rhodes and other places with Italian printed roundel, but yeah, you have to hold on to that. So I'm debating removing this, but then that becomes more of a tier 3, and we want to keep it at tier 4, so I thought, throw this in there, and throw in an exception of 2, and if the player wants to use their exception here and hope that they hold on to all their other territory, well, that's fine and dandy, but you know, they better be securing the rest of their places pretty tightly, because the enemy might swoop in anyways. So that's the scoop there. Next up, the new Roman Empire. Basically, control everything. So Italy, a member of this alliance, or nationalist Spain, control all or most of the following land zones. I threw in nationalist Spain just because I thought people might get confused. If I say a member of Italy's alliance, people might say, well, nationalist Spain is not a member of the alliance. Nationalist Spain is kind of that weird ground where I would actually consider it as part of that alliance. It would be part of the Axis alliance, because they're a controlled minor by Germany. But at the same time, people might be confused by that, because historically the nationalists survived the end of the war, and they were never called the Axis nation, right? So that's why I have them on here, and I hope it doesn't cause confusion down the track. So everything except for 5. All land zones with Italian printed roundel, and all land zones adjacent to every Mediterranean land zone, or sea zone, sorry. So new Roman Empire, basically imitating the the previous Roman Empire. And the previous Roman Empire extended, as we all know, quite a bit more than this one ever will. But they had, much of Spanish territory. They had, all of Gaul and stuff like that. So the new empire is a little bit less than that. It's just anything adjacent to the Mediterranean without a Spanish nationalist roundel, right? Yeah. So if it's a nationalist hands, then it doesn't matter. So that means that you have to hold on to this stuff as well as this stuff down here along the coast. Eastern Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, Turkey, Macedonia, Thessaly, Peloponnese, Abyssinia, Albania, Yugoslavia, and of course southern France and the rest of it. So yeah, that is a little bit more, it's like an early day Roman Empire. Maybe not quite early day, but you get the point. A very mobile, waterborne, Phoenician style Roman Empire. And that's what that one is. So it's pretty simple. So the exception on this one was 5. Just in case, of confusion. If the Republicans win this fight, I didn't want them to have to go after the Republicans and let the Republicans be and enjoy themselves. So that'd be 2 territories here, plus 1 here, let's say. But then you also have to worry about these 3 territories here, right? The Turks. So if the nationalists do win as historical, then the Italians can avoid going after the Turks and perhaps Yugoslavia as well. Yugoslavia as well. And, I don't know, let's throw in Eastern Egypt or something like that, right? These 2 territories, boom, and they still get their objectives at the end of the game. I think that would be a classy 4 on this one. You're holding Gibraltar, right? That's the major one. And say if instead of Turkey, you did grab Turkey and Gibraltar's in British hands, and these 3 territories are in British hands, you still have one to surrender to somebody, and so you throw in, I don't know, what's a good one to throw in? Morocco, let's say, right? Okay, so that's your 5 exception, and now you have to have Turkey and Syria and this kind of thing. You get the picture. So there we have it, the new Roman Empire. Let me know your thoughts on this one and your feedback on it, if you think it's good to go or if we need to work on it some more. Thank you all for watching, and I appreciate all your feedback and comments. Cheers!